Today we need a cool bench that's so simple that absolutely anyone can build it themselves. I'm making the whole thing out of old chipboard since I still have plenty of it lying around. No new wood will be wasted for this. If you don't have any leftover wood at home and need to get some, you can have it cut to the right size at the hardware store, which means you'll have even less work to do after building the formwork. In terms of design, the bench is going to be a classic garden bench with concrete runners and a wooden seat. And I think this project will be interesting for many of you because, as I said, it's really very easy to do. Of course, you do need a few tools to build it. Obviously, you can't do it without them, but you'll see it's really manageable. Altogether, you need 14 formwork pieces, and I'll show you the measurements here. With this bench, I'm also going to take a slightly different approach than I did with my last garden bench. For example, I won't make the seat as a single solid surface, but will divide it into individual wooden slats. That way, water can drain off better and won't pool on the surface, which means you'll have far fewer problems with moisture outdoors. We've already finished the most complicated part. Now we just have to assemble the formwork, but that's no problem either. I don't really want to go into much detail about building the formwork here, because in the end it's just a box with a recess at the top, and that recess is exactly as wide as the thickness of the wooden slats you'll use for the seat. That's all there is to it. In my case, I'm using 45mm wooden beams. And I've added 3mm to the height because I want to put an aluminum rail underneath later so the wood doesn't sit directly on the concrete due to moisture. Lastly, the obligatory silicone joint is added to make sure the formwork is sealed and the concrete edges are slightly rounded. You all know this already. And in this case I do it so that I apply the joint first before screwing on the last panel, because that way you don't have any space issues, you can reach everything easily, and for the last two joints, well, it gets a bit tight, but you can manage that too. So that's it for building the formwork. This time it was really extremely easy, anyone can do it. As you can see, it's just a simple box with a recess in it. And now we can already move on to the concreting. Once again, I got some inexpensive concrete from the hardware store as the base material, and as always, we'll enhance it a bit. I recently showed you in another video how you can improve the quality of such a ready mix a little. I also mixed in a bit of extra cement here, then microsilica to make the concrete more weather resistant and harder, and finally a plasticizer so it's easier to work with. But you already know all of that. So now the concrete just needs to go into the formwork. I had previously considered embedding some styrofoam cores again to reduce the weight, but I decided against it because a solidly cast runner weighs about 50 kilograms, and using styrofoam cores would have been a lot more work again. I think 50 kilograms is manageable, and you don't move a bench like that around the garden all the time anyway. It's best to compact a little as you go so you'll have fewer problems with air pockets later on. While I'm removing the formwork from the concrete runners here, I can also tell you a bit about the costs, specifically the material costs for the bench. They're really manageable, actually under 100 euros. When I add everything up, I come to roughly 80 euros, and the biggest expense is the wood, meaning the beams for the seat. Those alone account for about 40 euros, then you can add around 20 euros for the formwork wood, 10 euros for the concrete, and another 10 euros for the small metal parts, the threaded rods, which we'll need again later. I also did some research online to see how much such a bench would cost if you bought it ready-made. Unfortunately, I didn't really find many benches in this design, but the ones I did find were priced between 600 and 700 euros. And I would say in that case, it's definitely worth making it yourself because the amount of work involved with this bench is actually quite manageable. Yeah, the exposed concrete turned out really well, almost perfect. I really like it. And now we can go ahead and continue with the seat surface. I got the wood for the seat surface at the hardware store. These are 54 by 54 millimeter squared timbers with a surface that's already been planned. They're a bit more expensive, but you save yourself quite a bit of work that way. Yeah, when you get wood at the hardware store, make sure the squared timbers are as straight as possible and have as few knots as possible. You can still adjust and tighten the squared timbers a bit later with the threaded rods, but if you use straight wood from the start, the work is much easier. When drilling the holes for the threaded rods, you should work fairly precisely, because if you are not accurate, you'll end up with a length offset in the squared timbers later. I use a drill jig for this because it lets you drill fairly straight holes by hand. After that, I cut the squared timbers to the required length. With the concrete runners, you can choose the length individually. And then all we need is a surface protection, since the bench will be placed outdoors. This time, when it comes to surface protection, I'm going to be a bit smarter than last time. In my last bench project, I applied a hard wax oil, but it was not suitable for outdoor use at all. The wood turned grey and unsightly in no time, so today I'm testing a wood protection paint. This is a new product from my longtime cooperation partner Lignocolor, and it's supposed to be highly opaque, super durable, and offer very good UV protection. So we're going to test it out today. I've now decided on the color shade Thunderstorm in matte. Well, actually it was my wife who picked out the color. I was actually a bit overwhelmed by the color selection. The paint comes in 144 different shades, each available in a glossy and a matte surface finish. And as you can see, the current trend colors are included as well. Everything also has a bit of that chalk paint look, which is very trendy right now. We then decided to match the color to our terrace. That's where the bench is supposed to go. The bench should be grey, but not completely grey. The seat should stand out a bit darker. We really liked the color shade Thunderstorm, and I'm curious to see how it will look combined with the light concrete legs. By the way, at Lignocolor, you can also find many other products for surface protection. So if you need anything, just check them out. I've let the paint cure overnight, and now of course we still need to connect the pieces of wood somehow, and we'll keep it really simple. For that I got myself these threaded rods and these long nuts. This is what they look like. They're exactly 2 centimeters long. I don't know, I only know them as long nuts, but maybe they have another name. But it doesn't really matter, you know what I mean? I drilled the holes so that the outer beams have a diameter of 6 millimeters, which matches the threaded rod, and the middle beams are drilled to 7 millimeters. That way, the threaded rod holds the outer beams together, and you can simply slide the middle beams on. To prevent the wood of the seat surface from resting directly on the concrete when it gets damp, I screwed an aluminum flat profile to the underside, which creates a certain gap between the wood and the concrete. Finally, I just had to protect the concrete from moisture, so I applied an invisible sealant that doesn't change the look or feel of the concrete. And with that, the bench is already finished. As promised, it's really nothing complicated. Now I just have to get the beast up onto the terrace, and then we'll take a look at the finished bench. There we go. And now it's standing here. I have to say, it turned out really well. It looks modern, fits well with our terrace, and of course you can adjust the size however you like. You can also make the concrete form larger or smaller. The way it stands now, I'd say it creates a harmonious overall look. Looking back, we're not entirely sure if it might have matched a bit better if we had made the seat surface as dark as the metal frames of the seating set. But well, that's a matter of taste, and we're really happy with it as it is. What do you think about it? Feel free to write it in the comments. With that, we're done for today. I'm happy, and so is my wife. And yeah, I'm going to have a quick beer now, and then we'll see each other again soon for new projects. Until then, take care. Ciao.